Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Michigan Retail Outlook. How is Michigan's retail sector responding to COVID-19? I'm Scott France, president of France Media and co-publisher of Shopping Center Business and Heartland Real Estate Business. First, I would like to thank our sponsors, who are the ones that are responsible for making this webinar possible, and they include City of Southfield, Alliant Insurance Services, Sachse Construction, and Downtown Detroit Partnership. This morning, you're going to hear from an amazing and very knowledgeable group of retail experts, and they include Dino Bistolaris of Encore Real Estate Investment Services, Thomas Litzler of Schostak Brothers, Cynthia Kratchman of Mid-America Real Estate, Nathan Forbes of the Forbes Company, Mike McBride of RPT Realty, and Eric Larson of Downtown Detroit Partnership, and of course, Todd Sachse of Sachse Construction. At this time, I would like to turn over the panel to Todd, who is our moderator, who will introduce the panel. Thank you for your time, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Scott. Everybody can hear me now. Hopefully, it's going to be a thumbs up that they can hear. That's great. So thanks for the introduction. So you kind of introduce them generally. What I want to do is kind of go around the room and let each person just kind of give a little rundown as to who they are, a little brief history, so that everybody who's listening kind of a little bit more about you. So I'm looking at my screen. So I'm just going to go in order. So Cynthia, tell us a little about Cynthia and what you're doing here today.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Todd. I'm Cynthia Kratchman at Mid-America Commercial Real Estate. We're in Bloomfield Hills. I specialize in tenant representation and big box disposition in Michigan.
All right, Dino B, as you told me to call you. Bring it on, Dino.
Thank you, Scott, and all my fellow panelists. I am, along with my partners, Brandon Hanna and Ryan Vinko, a founder and managing partner of Encore Real Estate Investment Services. We're based in Farmington Hills. I've got 30 strong, active, aggressive, and knowledgeable agents that specialize in the sale of single and multi-tenant retail, industrial, and office assets here in Michigan and across the country.
Great, thank you. Mike McBride, you're the next contestant.
Thanks, Todd, and good morning, everyone. My name is Mike McBride. I'm the Senior Vice President of our Asset Management for RPT Realty. RPT Realty has 49 open-air shopping centers in key U.S. markets. 9 of our shopping centers are in Michigan. 8 of those are in Oakland County. I'd like to thank the organizers of this event, Shopping Center Business and Heartland Real Estate Business magazines. Really appreciative to be part of this this discussion, and I'm looking forward to it. Thanks, Todd.
Great. All right, Tom Litzler, bring it home.
Good morning, Todd, and good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here. I'm Tom Litzler. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Schostak Brothers Company. Schostak Brothers is a 100-year-old private family-owned business. Currently, we own 75 shopping centers. 10 of those are in Michigan. The balance are throughout the country, so we've got a good perspective on what's going on here as well as around the country. We also have a solid portfolio of office buildings, medical office, corporate headquarters in suburban Detroit, as well as a portfolio of industrial and warehouse throughout there. And, thanks again to the organizers, and I look forward to participating with everyone.
Great, thank you. Eric Larson, come on down.
Hey, Todd. I always wanted to be on a game show host and have you, say, come on down.
Yeah,
Eric Larson, CEO of the Downtown Detroit Partnership. We're a almost 100-year-old organization that's been stewarding the core of the city of Detroit. It's led by a C-suite group of private, public, and philanthropic sector executives. I also founded Larson Realty Group and have been doing some development in and around the region. Looking forward to the conversation today, Todd.
Great, thanks. And our anchor, Nathan Forbes.
Good morning, Nathan Forbes, managing partner of the Forbes Company, specializing in the development, operation, and leasing of luxury shopping centers in Michigan and Florida, including the Somerset Collection here in the Detroit area. And glad to participate. And for those of you who don't know, Todd and I were college roommates together back in the day at the University of Michigan back in 1982.
Blue. Right. All right. So Todd Sachse, Sachse Construction, kind of 2 core businesses, which is commercial construction. If you say anything that's not retail, then our other core business is retail. We build retail stores, malls and shopping centers throughout US and Canada. We build about 150 to 200 stores a year. So we build literally thousands of stores throughout US and Canada. So kind of on the dark side of the business, as we say. So my thoughts here is I'm going to kind of go macro and then we'll go micro. And kind of macro and talking about the COVID. We all know that the governors seem to control a lot of what was happening in the various states. So I just kind of want to open it up. So what was your guys' reactions? And this is not a political question. It's more about how it affected our world and maybe compared to other parts of the country. How our governors plan and how their executive orders affected retail, and whether you thought it worked or didn't work, short term and long term. So, who wants to jump on that one?
Yeah,
I'll start, Todd. This is Mike. I think the vast majority of retailers and owners understand the need to monitor and take a measured approach. That the goal in what the governor has set out is to reduce transmission rates and get them low and keep them low, and that the social distancing, the masks, and all of the other requirements in her 6-phase program are designed to help business operate, to get us back on track and get us moving forward. It's these safe practices at our shopping centers that are going to make our customers feel safe and be safe and want to spend more time at our shopping centers. We are working with local government and are getting great response. We mentioned one of our sponsors, Southfield, has been very proactive in working with us as far as outside permitting, allowing retailers to do different things. So it's very much a group effort, and it's been very, very positive from our perspective.
Yeah, Todd, just, from a downtown Detroit perspective, a little bit different than, probably a lot of the makeup in some of the more regional and national malls. It's much more entrepreneurial, much smaller businesses. Many of those businesses, really didn't understand the length of time that this, issue would play out. And so while they thought this was a, month, 2 month, 3 month kind of problem, they started to invest all of their life savings just to be able to get through. And that's been very, 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 very impactful, very troubling. Our unemployment rates in the city of Detroit, went from a low of 8% all the way up to a high of 25% currently. And all of that is sort of centered around both the service industry and the retail industry. So it's been fairly impactful. I don't know that the governor's action necessarily, created that situation, but it has been the biggest challenge in navigating this has been some of the inconsistency and the lack of knowledge going forward. That's been very hard on small businesses.
Right, so that's kind of an urban. So Nate and Tom, you guys got some larger centers and closed centers, a lot of national tenants. So how do you think it affected them differently than maybe some of the, as Eric said, some of the more local or mom and pop type of things?
So I think from the regional mall perspective, having clarity is paramount in these discussions. And because we act as the conduit from the consumer into the stores. So we really didn't have a governor on how many people we could allow in the common area of the malls. We had to provide the environment by which consumers and customers were comfortable entering the shopping center. Because within a regional enclosed space, you can social self-distance by maneuvering your way through the common space. But once you get to the storefront of a retailer, then the retailers had to deal with a whole different segment of issues and discussions within their own stores. First thing we did is went to one shift for our retailers. We opened 11 to 7. So they only had to deal with one shift. They had A shifts and B shift. Someone from the A shift got sick, the B shift would take over and they'd send everybody home. So it's a different way of doing business. But the lack of clarity is what kills these retailers. And I do believe we are ready, for at least from my perspective, to get to the next level of opening in these shopping centers, because I still think we're too restricted. We're forcing too few people into the stores, too many people into the common areas, and we have to focus on masks, self-distancing, and washing of hands, and we can eliminate some of those barriers and some of those problems.
So Tom, what are you seeing in some of your centers? You're some large retail centers, indoor, outdoor, and how the tenants are reacting to you.
To follow up on that, I mean, a lot of retailers are languishing. I mean, this was an awful situation. This between the social distancing and the masks and undercapitalized retailers. There's a lot of people that are really suffering, and there's a lot of businesses that still aren't open. For those of you in the audience that aren't in Michigan, our fitness centers are not open. Our theaters are not open. Our restaurants are operating at reduced capacity, and so there's a lot of retailers that are really languishing. On the other hand, there's some that are really thriving. The dollar stores, the essential businesses, the supermarkets, the businesses that had adopted early on to delivery and to curbside pickup are thriving in this environment. So it's really a mixed bag right now.
Right. So Cynthia, I'd be really curious. So now you're on the leasing side of things. Retailers are calling you, or you're calling them. Are they even answering your phone calls? Right? Are they even willing to have a conversation about a new space, an expansion space, or lease renewal? So I'd be curious as to kind of what you're hearing in that world.
You'd be surprised that we have had a tremendous amount of activity, and if you talk to any of the other brokers in town, you're going to hear the same thing. But some of it is category driven, which is obvious, discounters, and then the other parts are going to be opportunistic. So Art Van went out of business. So there's people stepping into that space. Furniture category is really on fire. You've got Love's taking a lot of those, Ashley's, Bob's, At Home. Everybody's making deals in the furniture space. Art Van, Pure Sleep went out. You got Mattress Firm and US Mattress. So there's a lot of that going on from an opportunistic standpoint. And the other thing, of course, is the retailers are moving from the C malls. And that's something you're going to see more of, and we're doing quite a bit of. It's not Nate's malls, it's the malls that are losing their anchors and they're languishing. So there's a whole host of retailers. I'm working with Kay to find a bunch of new locations on the street, and you're going to see more of that coming. Retailers that have a longer horizon, entertainment retailers. I do Andretti. We're looking for 100,000 square foot space. By the time you get that, we build up. So by the time you get that entitled and built, you're way on the other side of this, hopefully. So you have that kind of thing going on. And then it was mentioned redevelopment of the boxes. From a brokerage standpoint, we love that because that allows us access to different markets where we wouldn't have been otherwise able to get in. So that's something we look at. You know, the people that are developing out parcels, the 5,000 to 10,000 square foot has to be pre-leased, but there's a lot of that going on. So there's a lot more activity, I think, than people would imagine, and a lot more positivity. So.
All right. So Dina, what do you got to add? I want to make sure you got always more.
You know, I'm in agreement with Eric and Nate when they say the lack of clarity has been the biggest thing hurting retailers. When everything came down, and this is not to point fingers because this is new to everybody. There's not a person on this globe that has been through this situation before. It's a worldwide pandemic, so we're all operating as we move on. The lack of clarity and not knowing how long this is going to last and how long the shutdown is going to be for, I think was the biggest thing hurting retailers. And as a business owner myself, I can definitely commiserate with them. Now moving forward, there's more clarity. And the great thing about what I've seen over the past few months, and I think a lot of my colleagues and people can agree, is there's been a tremendous amount of cooperation on the part of landlords, on the part of tenants, on the part of lenders, on the part of management companies, because everybody was we're all in this together, we're all experiencing the same thing, and there's been some good things coming out of that. That being said, you know, I do think there's antiquated business models that were on the way out before the pandemic, and now that's been accelerated, and there's also opportunity out there as well. I mean, the essential business model, like Tom hit, dollar stores are doing great right now. We're selling a dollar store a day. Drug stores, anything with a health component is really strong right now. If you sell pizzas and if you have a drive-through, your business is better this year than it was last year. So while there is pain out there and there is trepidation, there's also opportunity, and people are taking advantage of the current environment as well.
let's drill down a little bit on some of the economics. So, rents. Is there a depression in rents? Are tenants taking advantage of the landlord, whether it be from leasing or renewals or coming back and asking for their handout? So what's going on in the leasing community as far as rents and kind of what's the impact of that?
I think we're still 6 months out at least to know what's going to happen, because it really hasn't happened yet. We haven't seen a drop in rent. So I think until we really understand who's going to go out of business, how much space there's going to be, it's really hard to assess that.
Well, I was talking earlier on the panel before the audience joined us, and in our portfolio, we're back up to 95% operating in terms of occupancy in all of our malls. We're only collecting about 70% of rents. So there's a 25 basis point delta there. Tenants that have opened that have chosen unilaterally to pay partial rent, zero rent, until we work out what they consider to be a fair COVID relief package, whether that's rent abatement, rent deferral, a combination thereof. There's lease extensions involved. There's co-tenancy, waiving of co-tenancy requirements involved, elimination of kickouts involved. So there's a whole series of things. We have 3 full-time leasing people doing nothing but working on lease amendments with the 530 retailers we have to get us through that closure period of COVID. So we are working on that, and now we have the grand opening, and every retailer is a different story. The ramp ups are different. The luxury guys are doing great. They're actually over LY. A lot of the ready-to-wear guys are really struggling, as you guys know. The Athenas, which is Ann Taylor Loft and Justice, the J. Crews of the world, the Brooks Brothers of the world, dealing with the bankruptcies on that front. Well, the ready-to-wear business has been slow. The luxury business has been well. Everybody's got different levels of ramp up and slower than others. So everybody's got a different tale of woe. And you have to look at this thing as a partnership as you approach moving forward post-pandemic.
To follow up on what
other you and Mike, that you have shopping centers, are you actually having to make deals at lower rental rates than you were before, whether it be renewal or a new tenant coming in, is it less than what you had before or pro forma? I mean, is there downward pressure on rents that's going to affect so many other things?
Was that for me, Todd?
I don't care, Tom, Dina, whoever. Yeah, go ahead. Go
Okay,
ahead, Tom.
there's really 3 different kinds of leasing going on right now, and maybe more. I'd put it into 3 different buckets. The one bucket is the kind of rent relief requests that you're getting from existing tenants. The other bucket is, leasing space that was vacant, your old-fashioned new leasing. And then the other bucket is renewing the tenants that you had. So you got to approach each of these a different way. And to Nate's point, we too did hundreds of lease amendments and rent relief amendments that basically kept our tenants in business. And those are really a function of what kind of debt you have. Without getting too deep into the weeds here, if you've got bank debt and you can get some favorable terms from a local lender, you have some flexibility to deal with those tenants and give them some relief. If you have CMBS debt or an insurance on your property, you're going to have a very difficult time accommodating tenants. But we were able to do hundreds of lease amendments and grow our average lease term base considerably. In terms of spreads, ironically, our second quarter spreads on renewals were very strong. They were very positive. So existing tenants that were doing well want to stay. Now, the third bucket, which I think everybody wants to know, is what happens going forward. It's all over the board. We have been doing some deals at budget based upon, strong properties with great locations. And we've also taken a careful look at some situations where maybe we took a deal that was under budget because, maybe our budget was wrong. Maybe we thought occupancy was more important. So it's a case by case. It's an artful business, not so much a scientific business.
Go ahead, Dina.
My apologies. Yeah, I think we're still about 6 months out from seeing the real effects on how rents will be affected. There was a tremendous amount of cooperation once everything got shut down between everybody in doing rent deferrals and things of that nature. There's also government programs. The government acted very quickly to help out, not just business owners, but also consumers out there who weren't working. And I think all that was done thinking that this would last 3 months and we would be out of this by June or July. That's obviously looking that it's not the case. And I think it just comes down to simple economic. We're very optimistic and bullish in the future, but For example, I'm selling a retail center next to a major university here in Michigan, and one of the major tenants there, a food service tenant, had planned on opening up for the school year, and it looks like they're not opening up anymore. And I think you're going to see a lot more of that. That's going to push down rents. Costs are going to go up as well. I mean, I think, and you guys can, it's costing more right now for landlords to, take COVID protocols and things like that. So I think we will see, just from a simple supply and demand and economic standpoint, rent compression, but with that will come opportunity as well.
Hey,
Yeah,
Todd,
Todd, I would, sorry, Nate, go ahead.
to just picking up on Dino's thing, to ask Todd, speaking of cost, what are you seeing in construction costs? I'm sure the audience would be very interested to see what kind of COVID pressures have there been on construction costs to people that are actually doing projects today?
So, I mean, just to get a little bit of that, short term, there actually has not been a big effect at all. And quite frankly, I would say construction costs are either flat or even a tick up, but not because of any COVID activity, but because the shutdown caused a compression. So all of a sudden, all these projects that were under construction got delayed. And then when we came back to work, everybody wanted to get everything done and caught up. So everyone is super busy. I mean, everyone we talk to is super, super busy. So we haven't fallen off the cliff yet. It's not like people have run out of work. But I will tell you that, we've lost about 30% of our backlog. We have probably had, 30 or 40 retail projects that people say, our client said, we're just going to punt for now. None of them officially been canceled, but they were delayed, whether it's till 2021. It was supposed to start in May, and they say maybe it'll start in fall, all of which is unknown. A lot of it is kind of delay. But from a construction cost standpoint, there really has not been certainly any downward pressure. And we anticipate, just kind of anecdotally, that eventually there's going to be some downward pressure because there's going to be more availability, which in a strange way is a good thing because this whole country is just short of skilled trades. Well, that's going to have an impact on pricing, I don't know, but it will definitely have an impact on productivity. We'll probably get projects done more faster because of access to people. Whether actually that will translate into cost, unknown, but likely not. So that's just kind of, looking at that. But that kind of sends me to the next part of this. We're talking about the landlord-tenant relationships. When new tenants are signing leases, are they putting more demands or different demands on a landlord, whether it be their tenant work letters, whether they want turnkey? Are they asking for more from the landlords, number one? And if so, how is that working for you? And is that how are you managing that? Because there are a lot of tax laws around that too. So knock yourself out. Cynthia, Mike.
Yeah, it hasn't really changed for us at this point. That's what it really has, especially working with national tenants. We have a certain formula, whatever that tenant is, what we're asking for in TI or landlord construction. So nothing's really changed, and we're not really being opportunistic or vulture-like at this point. I don't see it from anybody. But again, as leases come up, as more retailers go under, I think we're going to have to see what happens in the next 6-8 months. But I haven't seen people asking for more, if that's your question. Not at this point.
Yeah, Todd, that's been our experience as well. And I think Cynthia made a great point. The tenants that you have form leases, you're seeing tenants and landlords, be true to that form and not look to take advantage. We haven't seen that with any of our new leases with our existing tenants. And with new tenants, as we bring them on, we're still seeing pretty true to form of what we've seen over the past several years.
I will tell you from the mall standpoint, I see a little bit of the opposite. And that is that maybe the cost structure is higher in regional malls, but a lot of the retail tenants that used to underwrite these deals operating at a 16, 17, 15% occupancy to sales threshold. Now they're taking pre-COVID sales down significantly, applying a lower occupancy to sales, and that will be their floor in terms of their minimum rent. So we are seeing a little bit of a different negotiating tactic because they're not willing to sign up for pre-COVID volume or revenue sales thresholds that they were, pre-COVID.
Yeah, and Todd, I
What
would,
are you seeing in the downtown landlords? Are you seeing anything different in downtown landlords?
well, I would just go back for a second and a couple things. One, on Nate's point about percentage rent, that is where we're seeing the biggest impact because sales just aren't what they were. And so any landlord, including the downtown partnership that has some percentage rent on the earned revenue operations that we run, is seeing a hit on that. So I do think that that's going to continue to be an issue. The U of M just finished its latest economic forecast for the state, but also for Detroit. Rents are down 10%. They're estimating a 2-year at least recovery, on the retail rent side. Hotel occupancies are down to 53%. You're at a high of 80%. All of that sort of drives, as we were talking about, the overall traffic and the overall opportunity. So we aren't seeing so much a change in the leasing tactics as much as we are a real question as to how does this play out? How does it play out as we get into the colder months? How does it play out in terms of any additional support at the federal level? So there's a lot of sort of question and concern about what ultimately happens. What are lenders, able to do and are willing to do as we go down line? And again, as Tom pointed out, it depends on what type of lender you have. If you got a CMBS, loan, forget it. If you've got a local bank, you're in a lot better shape. And so all of that hasn't sort of flushed itself out. So I think the next couple months is going to be very telling as to how impactful this is.
Right. Mike, you said you had something to say?
No,
okay.
I commented on that.
Okay, got it. Okay, great. So interesting. So I'm actually somewhat surprised on some of those answers because I can tell you that from our end, the construction side, we are getting significantly more. And maybe it kind of goes to Nate's point. And a lot of the national retailers and high-end retailers and restaurateurs, which is kind of our niche, are demanding a lot more from their landlords. So we're doing a lot of landlord work, way more landlord work than we have in the past, both in quantity as far as the number of spaces or areas, but also in doing more, like saying, okay, you're building my bathrooms, you're going to do my storefront, all the way down to turnkeys, where landlords are making deals with tenants. And this is all in the last, 3 to 6 months. So it's that's some of the stuff that we've been seeing. So you guys have been talking a lot about kind of the finance end of it and the debt and equity and so on and so forth. You're saying about banks and CMBS and life. So maybe you can share some of the things that are actually happening out there. You don't have to share maybe what banks, but what are some of the things that the banks are actually doing? What kind of forbearance or forgiveness or deferrals are they doing? And what are the terms of those things? What are you kind of hearing?
So from our standpoint, we have Northwestern Mutual as our lender in our situation. And, we have assets that are low leverage. So it's the old saying, if you have leverage, you have leverage. If you don't have enough leverage, you got no leverage. So you kind of sit there and look at you, okay, so we'll talk to us next month, make this month's mortgage payment, and then make next month's, and we'll talk to you. In the meantime, we have a 35-year history with the life company, and we were able to work out in our shopping centers basically a 4-month forbearance of interest payments that basically equated to 50 to 100% interest rate forbearance to be repaid in the following 8 months after the forbearance period ended. So they didn't add it on to the end of the loan. They didn't extend the term. It had to be repaid. And we went through a schedule of opening and rent collections, and it was all based on when the malls reopened and the occupancy level and so on and so forth. So we were very happy with the partnership that they showed us. And that's happened in the life space, around 3 to 4 months of forbearance, anywhere between 50 and 100%, but to be repaid when that forbearance period ended in the subsequent months.
So just out of curiosity, then I'll expand this, but I'm curious. So how can you do that in such an unpredictable situation where, okay, you get your 3 or 4 months of forbearance and you got to start paying it back, over the next 6 months or 9 months, but we don't know whether they're going to shut things down again. So, is there anything that in your agreements that says, okay, if we're shut down again, or is it, hey, we'll talk then?
But you've set up a template, right? You've done the documents, you've done the amendment, and it's opened the door for the conversation. And if there was another shutdown, then you would look to extend that period of time. But just as they're not going to deal in the unknown, so you have a quantified idea of what you might be dealing with, you set up the template, you set up the documents, and if there needs to be another conversation, there needs to be another conversation.
So anyone else, what else have you guys been experiencing?
Our situation was very similar. In instances where we had banks to work with, we were able to get a very short-term deferral. It's not a waiver, it's a deferral. It's pay it back after the 90 days or put it back on the end of the loan, but it was not forgiven. And in those instances, we obviously could work with tenants. In the other instances, as I said before, if it was with a CMBS lender, we had absolutely no latitude. And in no instance did we build in a what if it happens again trigger. That's just a bridge that we would cross if it happened again. And a side point to that, in some of the negotiations we had with tenants, some of the quote national retailers that we deal with wanted to build in a what if it happens again provision into the rent relief amendments that we did with them. And I'm pleased to say that we negotiated 100% of our rent relief amendments without agreeing to that, just by falling back to the same situation we do with banks by saying, we'll cross that bridge if we come to it.
And Tom, what do you doing on leases going forward when tenants won't sign a new lease without some form of COVID protection?
Fortunately, we're dealing with a different pool of tenants than you are, and so far, we've been able to get away with it.
You want to handle our leases?
Like I said, it's a different pool of tenants. This is open air, it's small towns.
Yeah, and I'll jump on what Tom and Nate said. In speaking with a lot of our clients, it looks like there's been a tremendous amount of cooperation on behalf of lenders and landlords. That being said, a lot of that cooperation was done, hoping this would be a short-term situation, 3-4 months maybe. Now it's looking like, this is going to take a little bit longer, and there's going to be more of a fundamental change in retail, and it'll be interesting to see what happens down the line, because the one thing, one of my partners said that, lenders, they're not a partner in the deal, they're a lender. And when things are good, you're not giving them more money. So when things are bad, they'll work with you to a point. So it'll be interesting to see what happens down the line with, a lot of assets.
Yeah, I mean, Todd, I think it's sort of like, what Warren Buffett said, you don't know who's naked until the tide goes out. And so I think a lot of folks are sort of looking at that. But I also think there's another piece to, the lender pool. There's the sort of the public side of that, which is through the new market tax credits and brownfield and so forth. And so there's a tremendous number of projects, especially through smaller developers and places like Detroit, that are waiting to sort of see how Treasury will come out with some new guidance on how those projects are going to be treated. Because right now you've got compliance issues that are really tricky, especially as the imbalance between residential and retail is starting to get as sort of impacted as much as it is. And so again, like a lot of the things we've been talking about, we don't know exactly how all of this is going to play out until we get a little bit more certainty coming both out of Washington as well as out of the state.
So I think everybody on this call was around and lived through the Great Recession of 2008, 2009. So why is it so different? Why are banks and financial institutions, other than CMBS, which is they are who they are, why are they so different today than they were in 2008? Because I'll tell you, from our experience in 2008, the banks behaved very differently than they did then. So I'd be curious of what people think as to why they're behaving differently and what are some of the differences. Nobody?
I'll take a shot at it. I think in 2008, the banks were part of the problem, and it was a financially driven crisis. There's a lot less leverage out there. There's a lot more equity in deals out there right now. There's better borrowers, and they're in a position to be more proactive. This is an operationally driven crisis. It's not a financially driven crisis.
I think Tom hit the nail on the head.
Yep.
It's we can pinpoint the issue, and the problem in 2008 was a fundamental issue with the financial markets. At this point, you see what the issue is, and we're all working together to get it to hopefully get through this. But at some point, there will be a reckoning, I think, moving forward. I mean, at some point, you can only kick the can down the sidewalk far enough. And, at some point, there's going to be more REO and less workouts on the horizon.
So I want to completely go another direction now. We've got a lot of financial and big stuff like that. Let's talk about demographics. You've got baby boomers aging, you got millennials coming in, who are now in their, 20s and 30s. They're in a different part of their life. You got baby boomers who are becoming less of a consumer because as they get older. How is the demographics of society in America affecting retail? And what are landlords and retailers doing in order to address that? What kind of trends are you seeing? And what are you guys doing as landlords and investors to address that?
I think it's a lot of it has to do with omnichannel. That's the big word. And I think that the retailers that are going to be successful going forward really get how to do this. And the landlords that are cooperative in terms of you've got online pickup, curbside pickup, that needs some landlord involvement. The shopping centers weren't built that way. None of this did they have in mind. So I think that the young people are really good at omnichannel, and the retailers that are going to be able to appeal to those whatever generation under the baby boomers are going to be really good at that. And Nate, I mean, you can talk about that from how you might have had to change some things at the centers for pickup. Yeah.
We've spent a lot of time on this because I will tell you, if you look at the numbers today, and I'm just going to round up or down, but if you look at there's 1,000 regional malls today, in 36 to 48 months, there might be 300 to 400 left standing of any significance. And of those, maybe 150 to 200 really make an impact in a community as A malls. So when the retailers figure out what their matrix is of brick and mortar and e-commerce business, the landlords and developers better be there to support that infrastructure. And landlords need to become agnostic as to how the retailers make their sale, whether it's e-commerce or brick and mortar. So we better be the conduit and the service provider. And we have, I just had a whole presentation 2 days ago on our portfolio. I've had a whole team of people working on how we become that conduit. We are doing a whole personal styling initiative, personal shopping suites at all the malls with multiple personal shoppers, home delivery, curbside delivery, holiday pop-ups for stores so they can put people through their stores quicker to do gift wrapping and tailoring shops in our vacant spaces. So there's a whole bevy of ideas that we are throwing around on how to take our involvement to the next level. It's not just the curtain goes up every day at 10 a.m. anymore. You better figure out how to make it easy for that consumer that used to come 4 to 5 times a month, that now comes 1 to twice a month. You better figure out how to make that trip efficient, effective, and pleasant, or you will not be standing 2 to 3 years.
Follow up on that just briefly. I would say that the COVID crisis has taken demographics and compressed them. I think it's forced all ages to be more in tune with the internet, more in tune with deliveries. I mean, when I was working at home for a couple of months there, I live on a small street with just 5 houses. I couldn't believe how many Amazon and FedEx trucks and mail trucks would come every day. And everybody on my street is 50, 60, 70 years old. And, people are doing curbside. People are, to Nate and Cynthia's point, adopting the omnichannel. And I think that this crisis has accelerated that.
Yep, I agree. One of the things that I think across all demographics that's important is convenience. Certainly during COVID, customers want the opportunity to drive in and have touchless service. But I think that's going to be something that stays with us long term. We've installed over 1,500 common area 15-minute parcel pickup spaces throughout our portfolio, and tenants are gravitating to it, and we're finding customers thrilled with it and really utilizing that sense of convenience. Those are things that we're developing, and the demographic change, the millennials are much more tech advanced, and we're looking at ways to improve our tech and using that convenience model with technology and making parcel pickup and returns easier and more convenient for the customers.
To Mike's point, I'm going to give you a little fact, and the numbers might be off a tiny bit, but not a lot. 3 years ago, Amazon reached 5% of this country's population within a 30-minute drive time of a distribution center. By 2022, they'll reach 40% of this country's population within a 30-minute drive time of a distribution center. You see it unfolding right here in Detroit with the fairgrounds and Pontiac. That covers 4.5 million people within 30 to 45 minutes. So to Mike's point, convenience, we have to be convenience driven, and we have to be able to have deliverables that we can give to our consumers that compete with these kind of forces.
So I want to come back to the Amazon in a minute. I'll say the demographics, and I want to ask Aaron. So we've watched over the last 10 years this, I'll call it mad rush across the country to urban areas. A lot of that was driven by the millennial population. A lot of businesses wanted to be down there, collaboration, the energy, walkable, all the things, whether it was Toronto, I mean, it almost almost weather agnostic, because it was happening in Toronto and Detroit, and kind of northwest cities and the south. So it didn't matter whether it was a cold environment or a warm climate. So all the things that we're hearing right now, how do we think, and how do you think it's going to affect these urban areas, and particularly Detroit, with the retailers and the pedestrians just walking on the street? Because that's a different type of a retailer than these malls and shopping centers.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a different type of destination, Todd. I mean, what we all are doing is trying to create opportunities for people to come together, for people to be entertained, for people to actually have the kinds of, not only safety protocol and clean protocol, but also the kind of convenience that you're talking about. I think urban centers, Detroit in particular, has taken a step back, but it's taken a step back because the employment base hasn't been able to sort of access the buildings. Deloitte did a study in their largest office buildings where anything vertical is taking up to 3 hours more for their employees to get in and out of the office on a daily basis, because you're limited to 2 people per elevator, 2 people in the bathroom, all that kind of stuff. But what does exist in the urban center is these incredible spaces, these opportunities for people to come together and to congregate. You can mix the retail with the entertainment. The fact that the state now is looking at these social drinking districts and really starting to get creative about using infrastructure as an extension of the sales opportunities for retailers and restaurants is something that you just can't do in a lot of more suburban greenfield sites. And so there will be a competitive advantage for urban centers in many ways. We just got to get back to a situation where people are comfortable coming back to work, where people are able to live in high-rise environments. But in general, I don't think the move, first off, the move that was being talked about to urban centers was focused on a specific segment of the millennial population. Not all millennials are the same. And so there were some that were continuing to look for bigger lots, home, individual, single family homes, all that. There was also a segment that really was excited about living in the urban center, especially pre-kid, and had the flexibility. I think we're going to continue to have that. I also am seeing a fairly significant shift. We've got a lot of empty nesters and baby boomers that have moved into the city. It just, we've got to get back to a little bit more normalcy in these urban centers before we return back to a place where people are excited. But I think that will come back fairly quickly. I don't think we've turned the table, so now everybody wants to be in the suburbs and have a single family home and a home office. I think people are going to return to the cities fairly quickly after we get through this.
Yeah, I agree with Eric. I think there's a lot of talk of urban centers, the demise of urban centers based on what's going on. And certainly, there's large companies that are, for example, I think Twitter said that their employees never have to come back to the office if they don't want to. Google said that they don't have to come back until July of 2021. So until you see people getting back to the office in these urban centers and working, there's definitely going to be a lull. But that being said, I mean, I think humans in general, we're social people. I mean, we want to be around each other. We want to interact. And, you know, urban centers are really the center of that. So, you know, at the end of the day, certainly there's going to be a lag and there's going to be, you know, pain in those urban centers as far as retailers and such, but it'll come back a lot quicker than most people think, in my opinion.
I agree, Dino. I think at the beginning, we were more reactive and it was just this feeling like everybody's going to want to get out of the cities. I don't think that's happening. And I agree with you on human nature. And it even goes with the upscale malls like Nate's. I mean, people want to see other people. They eventually want to be in touch the merchandise. So it's not just the urban centers. I think you're going to, if you see how people have been behaving, being constricted and isolated and some of the behaviors we've seen out there, people are just, once they open those gates, I feel like they're going to run back to the malls and obviously downtowns.
So let's go back to the big A, right? So what Nate said, you know, 30-minute distribution center to all their customers. That's a staggering concept. You know, it used to be that, okay, think about a couple of years ago, I ordered online, I get it in a couple of days. And it was, I got Amazon Prime, I'm going to get it in a day or two, right? And now it's to the point where you're going to order something at 10 o'clock in the morning, it's going to show up at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It'll be in the matter of hours. And Amazon's got such incredible big data. They know exactly what to put in those warehouses because they know what people are buying in that 4.5 million, you know, population. So they have it. Probably, I've heard stats that they'll have 95% of the products that are bought on a regular basis within that area will be in stock sitting in their warehouse. So how can any mall, shopping center, urban area, how can they compete with that level of service, accessibility, and ease? I'd just be really curious what people think and what you're hearing from the retailers and as a landlord.
Well, listen, this has been a conversation for, 3 to 4 years. And I think what ends up happening is, in retailers specifically, the uniqueness of your merchandise mix has to be such that you provide a different level of merchandising, and we call it best in class in all retail categories. So in the case of Somerset, 40 to 45% of our stores are their only stores in the state of Michigan. And if you break that down even further, there's a big percentage of those that really don't do business on Amazon. They really don't in any way, shape, or form. You're not getting the trunk shows and the first, right off the runways to the stores on the racks. It's just, it's a different profile of shopping. The only thing that stops Amazon's growth and penetration in these marketplaces really today is the federal government and kind of initiating a fair taxable situation or antitrust situation with Amazon as they continue to grow, infiltrate their foothold into these marketplaces. You have to have best in class in all retail categories. You have to have experiences for the consumers that they can't get other places. Amazon becomes a commoditized business. A lot of it is essentials, but it becomes a commoditized business. But people's tastes, people's preferences are going to be changed for a period of time. And we have to learn how to direct our interest and direct our focus on providing a different set of experiences to our consumers.
Yeah, but Mike and Tom, I don't really know all your portfolios, but obviously different than Somerset, because that's a one of a kind here in our market here. Your rent tenants are probably much more middle market type of retailers. Some of it might be essential type of stuff. What are you seeing and what are you hearing and how are you preparing for it?
Well, I think, the Amazon question is not new because of COVID. I think maybe it's accelerated a little bit because people are staying in their homes, but it's nothing, that we haven't been dealing with for years. Convenience and essential services and experience-based, restaurants, exercise facilities, bringing in tenants that are more experience-based. Again, I think the effects of COVID on those businesses, as Todd Tom mentioned earlier, those are closed. That's short term, and we're going to see those open hopefully in the very near future. But using bringing in more experience based and having an overall experience, you can, you know, where there's restaurants, there's common area experiences, and retail shopping, so people can spend more time and make more trips to the shopping center. Those are some of the things, again, that we're looking at as far as merchandising mix and bringing in other tenants.
To follow up on Mike's point, I would say that the retail landscape has constantly been changing. It's been changing for the last 75 years. 30 years ago, everybody thought Walmart was going to put everybody else out of business, and they didn't. Now there's entire businesses that are built upon shadowing Walmart and building on their parking lots and adjacent to them. So there is a constant evolution. And just to supplement what Mike said, the composition of the retailers is certainly going to change, whether it's in, you know, Nate's malls or our open air centers or our neighborhood centers. It is going to become more service-based, more medical-based, more need-based, and less commodity-based, because commodities, you know, can be shipped by Amazon. So there will be an evolution, and there certainly will be, you know, a repurposing of some of the retail that goes away. Some of these large department stores and supermarkets and what have you will have another use.
Yeah, and piggyback.
I think it's a lot like what, you know, Cynthia and all of us have been saying. There's a social component to you know, to your shopping habits, and that, you know, that will never be satisfied through Amazon's platform. You look at what Related did at Hudson Yards. They took a series of internet-based stores and put them in physical locations so that people could actually touch and feel, you know, the product and be part of an overall environment. So I think there's going to be, and we've talked about this for a long time, I think there's going to be sort of the showroom, you know, Tesla type of opportunity, as well as the more traditional retail. Ultimately, people will want to come together, and it's not just in the mall setting, it's in the independent small businesses, it's in the Main Street kind of retail. All of that creates an environment and a level of entertainment and a level of you know, sort of just general coming together that you can't replicate online.
Yeah, I agree with you know, what everyone said. This isn't new. I mean, e-commerce has been the word of the day in our business for the past few years. I think this pandemic certainly pushed the fast forward on everyone's plans to combat e-commerce. But humans, we want to be around each other, so experiential retail is definitely the way of the future. And you're looking at companies like Walgreens or the drugstores, for example, whereas they're incorporating urgent cares and things of that nature into their stores. So, you know, they want to become a one-stop shop, not just for a retail experience or a pharmaceutical experience, but also for a health experience as well. And you can't really duplicate that through Amazon. I mean, Amazon can deliver drugs, sure, but it'll be tough to, you know, for them to send a doctor to your house and things of that nature. So I think that's really the way we're going to see retail move forward.
Right. Absolutely. Okay, let's do another switch topic here. So Michigan, we have winters, and earlier on in the conversation, we were talking about restaurants and how they're working now because of these, you know, social communities, and we're expanding it outdoors, whether it be in the suburbs. And I'm seeing they're doing outdoor in parking lots and so on and so forth. Well, come November or even October, when we lose that outdoor environment, what's going to happen? What can be done? What are some of the thoughts and you guys are hearing, or hearing your tenants thinking about doing at that point?
You know, some of the outdoor sales areas, we have existing tenants that are expanding their outdoor seating and planning ahead for such events, adding cover, adding the plastic vinyl, outdoor heaters and things of that nature. You know, in most cases, our sidewalks are even expanding into the parking lot. They're able to secure and expand their outdoor seating area. and it's a longer-term fix. So it's not just putting chairs and tables out in front, although some are doing that, and we're working with them. We're seeing others expand for preparing for a longer term with those type of outdoor equipment.
You know, Europe has lived with outdoor seating 12 months of the year forever. Now we're a little colder in temperature here, but obviously they're going to be restricted. The restaurants here are going to be restricted in capacity indoors. They're going to have to pick up the delivery system's going to have to pick up, the carryout's going to have to pick up. But maybe there's ways to think about how they heat these outdoor spaces in the not when temperatures are zero, but there's got to be ways to keep that outdoor space open during the winter months through heating, through temporary heating, through other measures, because we have to really begin to expand that footprint beyond just the indoor space, or sales are going to be compromised significantly.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's right, Nate. And I think, a lot of people are getting very creative about how to use cover and portable heaters and expand, because, it also creates a really interesting environment and aesthetic as well. And so, I think there will be opportunities to continue to extend, especially through the shoulder seasons. I also think that, retailers and restaurants in particular, because that's really what's going to be most impacted in the winter months, are getting better with technology. I mean, we've got an app that was developed by an ex colleague of the Gilbert organization called Plain Sight. James Chapman has created this app that allows people to go on and see exactly what the environment is when they get there. They know exactly how the restaurant is set up, how the tables are spaced, what protocol is required. Do you have to wear a mask? How long do you have to wear a mask? What are they doing in terms of cleaning procedures? What are the events that they might have within that space that you could be interested in? And then you can book your reservation. So I think people are getting smarter about how they're interacting with these spaces and are more informed than we've ever been as to what to expect once we get there. And that creates a level of comfort, it reduces the amount of surprise, which often is a turnoff. And so, again, I think there are ways that we're combating this. It's not going to be perfect, and I do think there's a bit of another shoe that will drop in the fall and winter from a sales perspective. But I do think it's getting smoothed out. It's not as drastic as it is perceived to be.
So are any of you landlords getting asked by your tenants to help pay some of the costs of setting up these outdoor facilities, tents, heaters, whatever? I see people that are building these platforms. Is all that being paid for by the tenants, or are the landlords contributing to any of that? Mike and Tom, I know you're like kind of outdoor shopping centers or downtown, Eric. I don't know what you're seeing, or Cynthia, I don't know if you're hearing what your tenants are demanding. I'm curious. There's cost in doing all that. Are the tenants bearing all that cost, or are they coming to the landlord and asking for participation?
So far, our experience has been that the tenants are bearing that cost. We're providing, they're using additional area and space, and at this point, we're not charging them for additional use of space. They're standing outside their demised premises, but whether it's the outdoor seating for restaurants, and we're seeing expansion of existing outdoor use, and restaurants who hadn't had an outside presence expanding outside. But we're also seeing it with the exercise classes, exercising out in the common area, having classes. And that adds another environment into the shopping center and provides a little excitement. So that's great to see. But all the costs associated with that are borne by the tenants. And we're also seeing some retailers expand on sidewalk sales, where they're bringing their merchandise outside. Again, the fixtures and the things that they're using for display and the other systems that they have, it's all their equipment. And we're working with them, to make sure that everything is safe. And one of the things that we consistently work with our tenants is to make sure that they're following the CDC guidelines and training their employees and doing those things when they're out. Well, when they're out in the common areas, certainly, but also, within their demised premises.
Our experience has been the same as RPT's. A good example would be at Woodward Corners that we manage for Beaumont. we coordinate, we manage the permit process so that we had say over where tenants went outside and exercised outside, what have you. But all the equipment, all the facilities, and the cost of all that was borne by the tenants, and the same in our portfolio.
I agree.
So let's go to macroeconomics. So let's all agree on one thing, that we're a consumer economy. And we all know that the national unemployment right now is a record high. We have the stimulus package and so on and so forth. Eventually that's all going to wear off. There's going to be a new level set of unemployment. So, many people have claimed that, and I talk to my clients and retailers, they haven't been hit that hard because of this kind of influx of capital into the economy from the federal government. What are you hearing? What are you hearing from your retailers about what do you think I'll call it the short and midterm effects going to be of a much higher unemployment for a period of time? And what do you guys think, Gales?
Well, if you can tell us when the stimulus will end and the unemployment checks will end, that's a big part of it. But what is full employment going to be? What is it going to look like 12 months from now, Todd? I mean, there's so many things that have yet to play out. People have learned to do business with less employees. What's the growth rate of these businesses? What's their business domestically and internationally? I think there's so many things we don't yet know. But one thing's for certain, there's going to be a combination of a lot of things. And there's a lot of metrics going to go into what full employment number looks like. Personally, I think we're in the third inning of what that's going to look like. And I just don't believe we know enough yet what this new order looks like post-pandemic to say what employment or unemployment is going to look like 8 to 12 months from now.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think once the stimulus, which we're already starting to see, because the follow-up package hasn't been executed on, but we're already starting to see, the disincentive to come back to work for a number of individuals, because the amount of money they were able to make through the additional stimulus outweighed the money that they were making in many of the service industry jobs. We're starting to see that tail off. It was a real problem, especially in the restaurant and hospitality industry, because people were typically making more by staying home than they were working, and they were having to provide incentives to just get people back into the restaurant. The other thing that's really interesting, and again, it's being fueled by the stimulus, is the lower income households are actually spending more year to date than they were. So that lower income household is spending about 15% more than they were in January of this year before COVID, whereas the higher income households are spending about 4% less than they did in January of this year. So clearly the stimulus has provided some additional consumer spending opportunity and pumped some money into the economy, but it's too early to know sort of how that's going to flush out throughout the rest of this year. I personally believe that the employment numbers will come back pretty quickly once we get people more comfortable and back in working in more traditional ways, because I think there is some artificial aspect to the level of unemployment that is being projected right now.
Yeah, I agree with Eric and Nate. I think we're still of this situation. I do think that, obviously unemployment a year from now is going to be higher than it was 12 months ago. But right now what we're seeing is there is an artificial aspect to what's going on. Also, we have an election coming up in November. Nobody knows who's going to be in charge, and that plays into it a lot as well. So I think a lot of retailers are obviously taking a cautious approach moving forward. All business owners are right now, but there's also optimism out there as well. And, we got hit with the pandemic, and there's obviously a space race going on right now to find a cure, a vaccine or therapeutics to alleviate that, and certainly that plays into it as well, how quickly we can come into that. So there's a lot of unknowns. We're certainly, I would agree with Nate, in the third inning of this, but there's definitely, like I said at the beginning, there's a kind of an all hands on deck, we're in this together mentality from the people that I deal with, and I think most of you probably can agree with that.
So a couple questions have come in from the viewers. which I just found, and I apologize for the delay in that. A little bit of a user error. So anyhow, so I'm going to try to run some of these by you. So have you guys been ever hit with the concept of force majeure? And has force majeure been coming up in any of your negotiations, whether it be with leases or land or lenders, and like that? Be curious what that's affecting any of you, if at all.
Yeah, I'll jump in really quickly. As an investment broker, I'm on the transactional side. I've heard of clients telling me their tenants are being a lot more broader with their force majeures in new leases. I've heard, essentially when this all started with a rent deferral request, force majeure been brought up, but also on the new contract side, we have attorneys on purchases slipping force majeure into contracts to give their client an out. That being said, that's a little bit outside of my expertise, but we are seeing it more and more, and certainly I think it's something that everyone's going to have to deal with, at least while this is fresh in everyone's mind moving forward.
Okay, so this is actually a really great question. And that is, so you go to some of these shopping centers, these malls in particular, even some of the shopping centers, because of limiting access to get into stores. I was actually at a lineup. I saw a lineup to get into a Lululemon store. And there were, 20, 25 people in line to get into the store because of lack of the number of people allowed. Here it is, and just in August. What's going to happen during the holiday season? How are the common areas going to be able to handle that? The backup of people and managing that? I'd be curious. I know maybe early, has there been any conversation or any plan to handling the, I'll call it, the holiday rush in dealing with limited, people allowed into the common area and or the stores?
Yeah, certainly, Todd. At RPT, one of the things we did early on is marked social distancing marks throughout the center to make sure that people could, if they had to wait in line, they could wait in line safely, and mark social distancing signage throughout the portfolio. But one of the things we're working with one of our tech groups is actually a virtual queue where customers can go up to a store and basically have a call ahead time, almost like a fast pass at the amusement park. So they can reserve their time, do other shopping, go to other places, and come back at a specified time and miss the line. So that's one of the tech things that we're working on. And that also has an element to it as far as parcel pickup. So a customer can call ahead and via text be able to arrange the location, get directions, and communicate with the retailer all via text, and pull up at a predestined location at a specific time and have the parcel delivered right to them. The technology might even be such that you can go to a shopping center, order your dry cleaning, a pizza, and a bottle of wine from 3 different retailers, pull into a single spot and have them all delivered to you at once.
The other thing that's happening, especially with the high traffic tenants like Lululemon in the case of Somerset, where Somerset Lululemon stores in the top 3 regional mall sales stores in the country, is they're going to open up holiday pop-ups. So we're working with them right now to open a separate one on the north. And then they're going to have a convenience center for tailoring and package package wrapping in a 3rd store. So as we've acquired some vacancy due to COVID with some of the marginal retailers, we're trying to fill those with our existing tenant base for holiday or seasonal pop-ups to take advantage of the overflow to reduce wait times to service their customers better.
Okay, we only have about 4 or 5 minutes left, but another question came in. I thought that was really interesting. Are you getting any requests or demands from or inquiries from tenants as far as air quality, healthy building? What are your systems in your building? Are there any changes being made in existing systems to deal with that? Has that become a a conversation or an impact to any of your projects?
Todd, I would think from your side of the industry, there's a lot of conversation around that. I know from the building, owner, multi-tenanted and office perspective, it is an area that, tremendous amount of concentration on, the number of air exchanges, the way that the air is being filtered, and quite frankly, there's a fair amount of proactive communication about the way a building is serviced and what additional actions and or precautions they have taken relative to preventative maintenance and overall system updates. So from a larger building portfolio, I think that's something that is not only here to stay, but is something that the better landlords are getting in front of very quickly, and new projects are looking at very, very closely as they install their various building systems. I don't know how that plays into from a small retailer standpoint. I don't know that has been much of a conversation at all. Many of the folks are leaving their doors open more often, so you got a lot more fresh air during the summer than you would normally. But I don't know how that plays into some of the regional and national malls.
I can tell you that from a construction side, we've had zero changes or inquiries about that on that end of it. So I didn't know if any of the common areas were an impact on that at all.
Yeah, Todd, as you might expect from our perspective with an open air shopping center, it really has no impact on us. Tenants are almost across the board responsible for their own HVAC system in our center, so it's not been an impact for us at all.
So at the risk of it, thank God I'm going to ask this question with only 1 or 2 minutes left, because otherwise this whole thing would blow up. But we have a political environment going on out there, right? And an interesting political environment. And then we have an election coming up, a pretty important election. So what are you hearing on the street from your tenants and from your lenders about the effect of the election, the result of the election, if it's going to have an impact on how they behave, regardless of your political position, just a fact of it going on? What's going on with that, or is it not part of the conversation?
I can speak from a transactional standpoint. We sell real estate investments. We're extremely busy right now, and a lot of that's driven by potential tax law changes moving forward. I know there's a lot of talk about getting rid of the 1031 exchange. They talk about it every 4 years, but it's renewed, and it's certainly heightened right now, especially with what's going on. So we're seeing a lot of our clients, sell assets or get in the market with the consideration of that going away. I think also people are expecting taxes in general to go up, which will affect your ability to raise rents on tenants and a number of things. So we're hearing a lot of people that want to do something now in preparation for potential, no matter who wins. I think there's going to be changes in government, no matter who wins.
Yeah, Todd, I mean, I think that, from a business perspective, there's a lot of talk and a lot of caution about, how the marketplace responds post the election. From a Michigan perspective and a Detroit perspective, if there is a Democratic administration in the White House, especially one that has as close a relationship with both our governor and our mayor, the sense is from a public investment, not from a private investment, but from a public investment that could bode very well for the state of Michigan. That does not in any way offset and or supersede the private sector importance and or investment or concerns. It just it's a fact that if there's a Democratic administration, there's some belief that that could bode well for Detroit in particular and the state of Michigan.
Okay, so it's 11:16. I think it's 11:16. So thank you all. This was great. I learned a ton. I hope you had a little bit of fun. Cynthia, Dino, Mike, Tom, Nate, and Eric. I appreciate all your time. I know this takes a lot of time out of your day. Hope all the people who watched this enjoyed it and got a few nuggets out of it. And to all of you, have a wonderful day, great rest of the week, and let's all try to drive this economy for all of our good, for our tenants, our landlords, and the public at all.
Thanks, Todd. Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Todd.